When you're searching for a movie to watch on Halloween, you probably choose between a ghost story, a monster movie, or a slasher film. And part of what makes slasher films fun is trying to figure out what makes the killers tick. Jason's out for revenge on the camp counselors who let him drown, Freddy's feasting on fear to keep his legend alive, and Chucky just wants a new body that doesn't require batteries. But when it comes to Michael Myers, he's a mystery. Why does Michael Myers kill? And what better time to try and answer that question than on the 40th anniversary of the original film? Ever since Halloween came out in 1978, several sequels have tried to pin a motive on Michael. We'll look at the franchise and try to find an answer, and I'll give my thoughts on the new film. But before we analyze the timeline, let's take a look at some of the history first. If you know me well, you know that I enjoy a good horror movie. I like them so much that I made a side trip during my California vacation to see the houses from The Nightmare on Elm Street and the Myers house from Halloween. Once we found the house on the map, I tried to recreate the Steadicam walk that John Carpenter did for the film's open.
Annie!
When most people consider the best horror movie to watch on Halloween, it's probably Halloween. And everyone knows who Michael Myers is, right?
Austin Powers.
Doc said Michael Myers.
This is Mike Myers.
It should be the Halloween mask.
This is a Halloween mask.
No, the killer dude from Halloween.
Oh, you mean Jason?
No!
When it came out, Halloween was a massive hit and made the slasher genre what it is today. Psycho created the slasher, but Halloween perfected it. And it's fitting, since Janet Leigh, who starred in Psycho, was the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis, who stars here in Halloween. Both of them were given the title of Scream Queen in their own era. Halloween as a film brought the slasher formula to the mainstream and set the rules for the genre. A slasher is defined as a movie with a body count. With no blood, Halloween was special. It relies on suspense as the killer takes out each character, and what Michael Myers wears on his face is just an old William Shatner mask that's been painted white. John Carpenter not only directed the film, but he wrote the script and did the soundtrack. He also got some of his buddies from his band, the Coupe de Ville, to take turns playing Michael Myers throughout the film. Nick Castle is the one who gets the most credit. Halloween 2 picks up right where the first film left off, taking place on the same night. John Carpenter refused to direct the sequel. He thought the story had a perfect ending. The studios managed to at least convince him to write the script, which would enable him to keep his part of the franchise profits. So to keep things fresh, he introduced a twist that he originally had in mind for the first film. He instead chose to include it here in part 2, and it would have major ramifications on Halloween lore from decades to come. He revealed that Laurie Strode was actually Michael's biological baby sister. Their parents had another family adopt her, shrouding the truth in secret in the hopes of protecting her if Michael had ever escaped, searching to kill her like he did her older sister, Judith. Laurie's connection to Michael was nowhere to be found in the original film except for one really disturbing deleted scene. Here you can see the word sister scratched into Michael's cell door. The evidence was there all along thanks to this deleted scene. It played only on the cut that aired on TV. After Michael's death in Halloween 2, the third film took the franchise in a completely new direction with Season of the Witch. John Carpenter thought Michael's story should end in part 2, so the idea was to instead make a Halloween anthology series about the holiday instead of just one serial killer. The film used the holiday's ancient origins as a backdrop for a story about mystical masks that use witchcraft to kill kids.
8 more days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
But without Michael, the movie bombed. Only years later, it gathered a cult following. Personally, I really liked this one.
Silver Shamrock.
The other sequels, not so much. Halloween 4, 5, and 6 form a loose trilogy of their own, and Michael Myers is back. Because movies. In these next 3 films, they try and explain why Michael is evil, where he gets his superhuman strength, and how he's unable to die. Michael is on the hunt for his cousin Jamie, with some help from a mysterious man in black guiding him from the shadows. That would be Dr. Terrence Wynn, the administrator of Smith Grove Sanitarium, and he turns out to be behind Michael's killing spree since the very beginning, enlisting an evil babysitter to fill his head with cultish thoughts and orchestrating his escape in the beginning of Halloween 1, which finally answers the question of how can Michael Myers drive a car? Apparently, this guy, Dr. Wynn, was teaching him.
Now, for God's sakes, he can't drive a car. He was doing very well last night. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
Dr. Wynn is also later to be revealed as the leader of Cult Thorn and the one who put an ancient curse on Michael. The curse of Thorn dates back to olden times when the stars would select one child in a village and mark them with thorn. They were then granted supernatural powers and compelled to sacrifice their entire family on Halloween night. By doing so, it staved off plague and ensured that next year's harvest was bountiful and plenty. This all might make for an interesting twist, but making Michael the centerpiece of a cult conspiracy really takes away from what makes him scary. The Thorn trilogy is then ignored completely once Halloween H2O came out, which celebrated the 20th anniversary of the first film. H2O brought us the return of Laurie and gave us what we thought was the end of Michael Myers in a pretty epic conclusion, which turned out to be a fake-out with Halloween Resurrection. In the beginning of the film, Laurie falls off a roof and dies, in an homage to her mother, who famously died early on in the movie Psycho. Then, in 2007, Rob Zombie made a reboot telling the story but with excessive violence and gore. I personally didn't care that much for these films because they stripped away the thing that made the franchise worth watching, the mystery. Here, there's no mystery to why Michael is evil at all. In Zombie's run, Michael grew up in an abusive family, something that's the polar opposite from the original film. In Carpenter's take, Michael had a normal family, but one night he just snaps, for no reason. He's just evil. Rob Zombie didn't understand the most important thing about the story. What makes Michael Myers scary is that he kills for no reason. The original script for Halloween only refers to Michael as the Shape, and it doesn't offer any insight into his upbringing, his insanity, or his motives. That's because they didn't exist. He kills because he's pure, unstoppable evil. He's a supernatural force of nature. John Carpenter and his co-writer Deborah Hill didn't have an epic 9-part saga in mind, they just wanted to scare you. Michael isn't an abused child, a brainwashed cult assassin, or a killer bent on murdering his family. He's the boogeyman. Asking why he kills is like asking a tornado why it destroys.
We're here to investigate a patient that killed 3 innocent teenagers on a Halloween in 1978.
The new Halloween in theaters now celebrates 40 years of the franchise and does something pretty bold. It erases all the sequels and continues the original film as if those movies never existed.
Everyone in my family turns into a nutcase this time of year. Yeah, I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Strode. She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
It's become a popular move recently in Hollywood called a retcon, which is just a shortened way of saying retroactive continuity, where the previously established narrative is changed. Halloween 2018 for me was a return to form. The filmmakers here did something that hadn't been done in a long time. They made Michael scary again. It's 40 years later, and Michael Myers is now 61 years old. But here, he's just as strong and just as impossible to kill. There are no family ties this time around. Laurie is not his sister here, and Michael is back to being a killer without motive, attacking at random, and it's great. It's not perfect, but it's definitely the best sequel yet. I don't want to get too much into the story because I think it's worth going for yourself to see it on the big screen. Overall, I give the film a B+. It's a well-crafted return to what made the franchise great exactly 40 years ago. I hope you liked the review. Leave your comments down below. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.